Alright, welcome back to my channel here. Today we're going to be looking at this John Deere LA 105 that I got in. It has a brake problem, and there's a little bit of a story with that and what I found just getting it off my trailer. So we're going to get this jacked up, take the back wheel off. On these John Deeres, the brake is on the left side. On most riding mowers, the brake is on the right side. So that's why we're going to be working on this side over here, because it's just a little bit different. So we're going to get this tire out of the way here so we can see. And it's nice and warm out, so this cap comes off pretty easy like that. Let me get the snap ring off here and the washer to hold the cap on. Now this tire will slide right off. And what you want to watch for, there's a key that goes in here. And it's already not there. Now, if you were doing this job in the grass, you would not even know that there's a problem. The key already fell out because it was on the bottom here. So you want to make sure that you don't lose this. I've gotten some nice riding mowers already because the people thought the transmission went bad because that key fell out, and they had no idea. So down in here, right here, this is all the brake mechanism. So when we step on the brake pedal, this lever goes front and back. And if you've ever worked on these, you can already tell that that nut is already tightened up way too much. Okay, so I said there was a little bit of a story with this brake deal here. And the person said that they had it at the John Deere dealer. And the John Deere dealer told them that the problem with the brake was internal, inside the transmission. And I thought, well, that sounds a little strange, but whatever. I got it loaded up on my trailer. I made it stop so I could not run off the trailer. And I got home and I looked at it and I thought, there's something missing in there. So, you know, I wasn't at the dealer. I have a good idea what dealer it was. And it wasn't the local family John Deere dealer that had been around for decades that John Deere put out of business. They pulled their franchise. This was like a big corporate kind of dealer. And so I don't understand what's actually going on here, but it seemed like something was missing. So here's one part of the brake. Pretty oily, probably lubricated. Okay, so it does look like everything's here, but why did it seem like the adjustment was off so far? And there's the other brake pad back there. So inside the brakes here, these are little pins. These like to freeze up on older machines. So the first thing that goes in, you have this plate that the pins push against. And then here, this is your actual pad. So this goes in this way because that's shaped to fit the way the disc is shaped. It is possible that the brakes are just totally worn down. Yeah, these should be sticking out further than that. These little pins, they need to be out farther. The way this brake works, that goes against there. And when you pull on the brake, when you step on the pedal, this rotates and pushes those pins in, because this is the way that this is shaped. So yeah, it's totally possible that these brakes are just wore out. They are wet, but that has nothing to do with adjustment. I have another brake pad here, and they're about the same thickness. Actually, they're probably almost the same size. Like this one here would probably fit. Yeah, this one does fit in there. And that's where the pad, that's where the pin sits. That's pretty close to where it should be, probably. So is the inner pad worn out too much? I'm not totally convinced that there's a leak. This is not a hydrostatic transmission. This is a gear drive transmission. So, you know, there's going to be some grease in there, and a little bit of it may liquefy, but there's not going to be oil in there that's going to leak out. You know, I suspect that this may have been getting lubricated externally somehow.
Actually, this shaft can seep oil out over a long period of time. So it would be a good idea to periodically look in there and maybe clean that with brake clean or a degreaser. You know, just spray it a little bit to help keep the pads dry.
Okay, so we're going to come back to this. I'm going to order some new brake pads. These here do have some wear on them. But I'm just really suspicious that why would the brakes not get repaired while they're at the dealer? You know, why would the dealer let somebody leave without repairing their brakes when they're going to go back to cutting grass with it? That just seems a little strange to me. Although in the end, it did work out because the customer bought a new John Deere tractor, a new John Deere riding mower. So I guess whatever the strategy was, it worked out for the dealer. And the person that bought the new tractor, he's happy with it. Let's hope it stays that way. So we're going to get some new brake pads for this and come back to it. Finally getting back to this John Deere LA 105. And earlier in the video, I took the brakes apart, and I think the brake pads are wore down pretty good. Well, I finally got the new brake pads in. These are the new ones here. These are the used ones. And there's a spot where the rotor wears on these, and you can see a little lip right there. And even here on this corner, you can see how much thinner the original pad is, how it got wore down. Plus they were soaked in oil. I don't know if someone tried to lubricate something. There you can see how much they wore down. And this here's a new one. So the new pads are just as thick as the original size. If I can get it in focus here. A little better. So we're going to put these new pads on. Hopefully we can get the brakes working again. Got the brake disc all cleaned up. This was oily. Now this has the hub on it, so it only goes one way. We're going to figure out what that is, because I didn't make a note of it when I took it apart. So we'll start off with putting the inside brake pad in here. And it sticks out a little bit there. So if we put this with the hub facing in, which I'm not sure which way it goes. Like I said, I didn't pay attention. I should have. There's no dirt back there. Well, that way I know it's able to get against the brake pad. That's what we want. It needs to be able to get against the brake pad. If we put the hub in first, it's not going to, it's really not hitting the brake pad. So they're just not going to work right. So we put this on with the little hub facing outward. That way it goes in all the way against the brake pad. Then on this piece here, you have a little backing plate that goes in here for the rods to go against, the little pins. Then this pad goes in. Now these two little pins here, sometimes they get rusty and they get stuck in here. And that can keep the pads, that can keep your brakes from releasing in order for you to roll it. If they get stuck and you try to drive it, you may not realize it. And you'll drive around with your brakes engaged and that will wear out the pads. We're going to put just a little bit of grease on these to help keep them from getting stuck. Now on this one, it's got this big spacer here. And this is going to go on like this. And we get the bolts started here. Now you can see that brake disc is turning in there. Now this person had said they went to the dealer and the dealer looked at it and said the brake problem was inside the transmission and would need a transmission. That's what I was told. But that disc is turning, and if I hold that, then it doesn't turn. So we're putting these new brakes on, and we're going to try and get this to work the right way. So after this, the washer goes on here. And we'll loosen this bolt. I just put it on just to see how it would fit. But we have to loosen up this bolt. And that little strap goes on there. So now we can tighten up the caliper. This is basically a caliper like on your car. So we can tighten that up. Now this needs a little bit of help. This has a spring that goes on here. This guy here. So that pops over that. And it gets it going just like that. That's to help this come back so that the brakes release the way they're supposed to. Then the next step, put this locking nut on here. This needs to be a nylock nut so that it doesn't come loose because this doesn't get tightened all the way. So start off with having just a little bit of slack in it like that. Now we're going to step on the brake pedal. This lever is going to move front. It's going to push in on those two little pins that are in there and push that brake pad against the disc. See, with just a little bit of movement, it locks up the axle. That's how it's supposed to work. So there, I have the parking brake engaged so that I won't roll away. And I can't turn it by hand. So one thing you do want to make sure when you release the parking brake that you can turn this, that it's not too tight, that your brakes are dragging. So the next step here is to put your wheel back on. If everything works okay, this adjustment is fine. If you're driving it and it seems like the brakes need to grab a little bit more, like, you know, right now it's not moving. That's just my hand pressure there that's making that turn. But at this point, you drive it, see how the brakes feel. If you're going down a hill and you need more brake, you turn this a little bit, maybe 1/8 of a turn at a time. You don't turn it a lot. You turn a little bit. And you still want to make sure that you can move this when the brake is off. That way you know that there's no pressure wearing down your pads. So I'm going to clean this axle up a little bit. Because I had it sitting out here in the rain with the cover off while I waited for parts and weather. And we'll clean off the key a little bit here. Yes, I have a wire wheel in the garage. No, I can't get to it. And cleaning this off with this wire brush is going to be plenty good enough. I'm going to put a little grease on it. That's going to stop the rust. These are a fairly loose fit anyway, these axles, when they have a keyway like this. Pretty much just about everybody except for the older MTDs use a keyway setup like this. And they have a little bit of play in there, so they're not very hard to get off. If this was an MTD, the older style MTD with 2 flats, you would want this to be shiny metal. And then put some grease or something, anti-seize on it. But for this here, it's not a big deal. And we don't want enough grease to make a mess, just enough to coat it. Just a nice thin coating. And we'll put a little bit on the key. And the washer goes on. The washer helps protect the key and also holds the dust cap on. So it's always a good idea to put that washer back on there. That seems to be holding pretty good. When it did turn, it's because the tractor tilted and the other tire's up in the air. So these transmissions are a differential. which means it's just like in your car. You turn one wheel one way, the other one's going to go the other way because I have the brake on. Without the brake on, the transmission can slip in internally, so that's why the other wheel turns at a different speed. So the next step here is to test it out. Well, first time stop, it works. Well, I'm going to leave the adjustment just like that. The brakes seem to be working pretty good, just the way they are.